Warren Buffett didn't sit down with you and spell this out, and he didn't whisper a one-size-fits-all get-rich trick. But framed in the spirit of his approach to capital allocation, there are three structural, surprisingly cold reasons you may still be broke. This isn't an attack. It's not a moral judgment. It's math, incentives, and psychology working together to shrink your future one day, $1, one decision at a time. Quick note you'll see on screen. Framed in the spirit of Warren Buffett's capital allocation principles, not direct quotes. Keep that in mind. We're borrowing a lens, not inventing words for someone who didn't say them. You've been told the problem is laziness, bad habits, or a lack of hustle. That's an easy story to tell around a campfire because it blames the person rather than the system. But the harder truth is this: most people are trapped by mechanisms that look like common sense. They feel like personal choices, but they're structural. If you want to change your financial life, you need to understand the engine that's been running on autopilot. I'm going to name those mechanisms plainly. I'll show you the math behind each. I'll give you the mental models you need to see them in your daily life. And I'll leave you with one practical checkpoint after this first block, so you can start testing reality on your own. If this is landing with you and you want the escape protocol that follows, the 3-step practical sequence, hit subscribe. I'll walk you through it step by step. Reason 1. The biological time equation. You have 24 hours. The market only buys a slice of that. Your hours are finite. Your wages are often capped. Your replaceability is priced into your paycheck. Think about your day as a simple budget of time. 24 hours total. Subtract 8 for sleep. Subtract another 3 for commuting, chores, meals, basic life logistics. That leaves roughly 13 hours you can allocate to work, family, or rest. If your job pays you for 8 of those hours, that's the hard ceiling most people don't see. No amount of willpower will make a single day longer. No degree will add more hours to the clock. Now, overlay a market principle. The value of labor is priced by replaceability and productivity per hour. If your role can be filled by someone else at a lower cost, the employer will price it that way. If your output is limited by the tools you use, you're effectively selling one shovel at a time. Here's a clear mental picture. Shovel versus excavator. 2 workers. The first digs with a shovel. He can move, say, 1 cubic yard of earth per hour. The second owns an excavator and can move 100 cubic yards per hour. If the market pays $20 per cubic yard moved, the shovel worker can capture $20 an hour. The excavator owner can capture $2,000 per hour, minus machine costs, of course, but you see the scale difference. That's the point. Labor without leverage has a strict ceiling because it trades time directly for money. Capital with leverage multiplies output. An excavator owner isn't paid for sweating in the sun. They're paid for owning a machine that multiples effective labor. Replaceability matters too. If you're a line cook, a call center agent, or a junior analyst, the market can find many people who will do the job for a similar wage. Your individual bargaining power is small. Let's make this slightly more concrete with a trimmed hypothetical example. Suppose you're a software developer making $60,000 a year. You work roughly 2,000 hours per year after vacations and sick days. That's $30 per hour. Now suppose you take time during nights and weekends to build a small tool that automates a portion of your job. And that tool can be sold to other teams. Suddenly, A few hours of focused work scales beyond your personal hours. Instead of trading 1 hour for $30, you're creating something that, if productized, could return multiples of your hourly rate because it sells to many customers. Most people never make that leap because it feels risky, unfamiliar, and slow. They default to the only sure thing they know: more hours, more overtime, more gigs. But more hours only buys exhaustion, not scalable wealth. The biological time equation is unforgiving. There's a ceiling to what labor alone can capture. A second related concept under this umbrella is replacement cost, the price the market is willing to pay to substitute you. If a task can be standardized, automated, or outsourced, the market sets a ceiling. That ceiling is rarely visible until you start asking the right questions. Ask yourself 3 quick questions to test whether you're trapped by the biological time equation. 1. Are you primarily paid for hours rather than outcomes? If your income disappears when you stop trading hours, that's a red flag. 2. Could someone with less skill or experience do most of your tasks if they were shown once? If yes, your replaceability is high. 3. Do you have small bets or experiments that turn your time into scalable outputs? If not, you're sitting on unrealized leverage. If your answers lean towards vulnerability, don't panic. This is where leverage comes in. Leverage is the separator. It's the machine that works while you sleep. Leverage can be technology, intellectual property, ownership of scalable processes, or ownership of capital itself. The escape from the biological time equation is not necessarily quitting your job tomorrow. It's learning to shift a portion of your scarce hours into building or acquiring leverage. Here's a practical starter move. Pick one small, repeatable task you do at work or in your side hustle that takes 2 hours a week and ask, can I build a template, a script, or a simple product that automates 80% of that time? If you can, you're turning a constant, your time, into a variable that can scale. The math of compounding scale beats the math of endless hours almost every time. Now move to the second structural reason, the saver's punishment. This is where plain cash, the money you keep in a checking or savings account because it feels safe, quietly loses purchasing power. The mechanism is simple: fiat currency and inflation. Governments issue currency. Central banks manage supply. Prices generally trend upward over time. If your cash sits idle and its nominal amount doesn't grow at least as fast as inflation, you're losing real value. Call it what it is. Cash is a melting ice cube. It looks solid. It buys groceries today. But left in a pile, it shrinks. I'll give you a straightforward hypothetical to make the point. This is an example, not a prediction. Suppose you have $50,000 parked in a plain bank account. Assume inflation averages 5% per year over the next 10 years, a plausible rate in many historical periods and a conservative figure for the lesson. After 10 years of 5% inflation, that $50,000 will only buy what roughly $30,700 buys today. Mathematically, you take $50,000 and divide by 1.05 to the 10th power. The number is startling because you feel like you have the same nominal dollars, but the future you can purchase far less. If inflation runs at 7% annually, again, a hypothetical, the same $50,000 is worth about $2,500 or $400 in today's purchasing power in 10 years. That's almost halving your real wealth. Even if your bank pays interest on a savings account, many standard savings rates over the past decade have been below these inflation figures. Earning 1% on a savings account while inflation is 5% still leaves you with a net real loss. That's the punishment. Why does this happen? Because modern fiat systems inflate money supply to smooth economic cycles, support governments, and manage debt. The effect isn't a targeted theft, but a diffuse erosion. If you hold cash, your claim on future goods weakens. Those who own assets that either appreciate with inflation or produce real cash flow protect themselves better. Look at the difference in mindset. A person who saves cash in a bank in hopes of being ready for the market is effectively collecting ice cubes in a warming room. A person focused on capital allocation, the Buffett way of thinking, asks, how can I transform idle cash into productive assets that either rise with prices or generate income streams that can be reinvested? Examples of productive deployment are many and context-dependent. Broad index funds that capture corporate earnings growth, shares in businesses that produce real profit, rental real estate that can adjust rents with inflation, and certain commodities. Each has risk and trade-offs, and none are guarantees. The key idea is conversion. Move money from static to productive uses, and do so intentionally. Don't merely hope the bank's tiny interest rate will beat the invisible tax of inflation. A short, practical illustration. Imagine two people, both with $20,000 saved. Person A leaves it in a checking account earning 0.5% in a 5% inflation environment. Person B invests that $20,000 into a diversified index fund that averages a historical return of, say, 7% nominal over long periods, again, a hypothetical and not a promise. 10 years later, Person A's nominal balance might rise slightly, but have significantly less purchasing power. Person B, after fees and volatility, is likely to have preserved and even grown purchasing power. The gap is not just numbers, it's future options, ability to choose work, to move, to invest, to take advantage of opportunities. That's the quietly radical difference inflation creates when cash sits idle. There's an important behavioral angle here, too. Cash feels safe. Safety is seductive. When markets swing, people clutch cash and wait for the right time, often waiting for a market bottom that only reveals itself in hindsight. Every day you wait, inflation quietly trims your options. It's not dramatic or headline-making. It's a slow leak. Paychecks bought less tomorrow than today. One more thing before we pull this together. Savers who feel betrayed often react by doubling down on saving. They stash more cash in accounts that underperform inflation, and psychologically, they feel like they're doing something responsible. But the rational action changes once you accept the arithmetic. If preserving purchasing power is the goal, you must either find safe real returns that at least match inflation or accept that a portion of your net worth should be in inflation-resistant assets. That doesn't mean putting everything into speculative bets. It means deliberate allocation. So far, we've opened two cracks in the system. Time is finite and has a ceiling. Cash erodes in real value if left idle. These two alone explain why many people with decent incomes never build lasting freedom. You trade constant hours for a capped income, then you tuck what's left into a vault that's slowly melting. But there's a third mechanism that completes the trap, and it's the angriest of the three because it ties the structural to the personal, the way we fund our lifestyle. This is where status, ego, and social pressure turn future labor into today's consumption. I'll give it a name that's blunt but accurate: the ego tax. Ego-driven spending is not only about wanting nice things, it's about signaling identity and the stories we tell ourselves. It's rational in a social sense. Owning a certain car, home, or phone changes how people see you and how you see yourself. The problem is the funding mechanism. Too often, that shiny thing is financed with high-interest credit. When you buy depreciating things on high-rate debt, you're literally selling future hours of your life at a steep discount. Consider a common example: a $50,000 new car bought with an auto loan at 8% interest and driven off the lot. Cars depreciate quickly. In the first year alone, a typical new vehicle can lose 15 to 20% of its retail value. That's a guaranteed, immediate loss before you factor in interest payments. If you finance and carry high monthly payments, you're pulling future income forward to buy temporary status today. And the math says you lose. I won't finish that calculation here because we're building the story step by step. But picture this in your own life. Every monthly premium you pay on debt for consumption is future time sold. That's not metaphoric, it's literal. You give away the flexibility to reduce hours, change jobs, or invest because you have fixed obligations. The wealthy tend to avoid this trap not because they're immune to desire, but because they recognize the cost of funding lifestyle through leverage that doesn't produce income. Before we go deeper, pause and picture these three forces working together. You're capped by hours. Your cash savings are shrinking in real terms. You borrow to keep up with peers, and that borrowing increases your fixed work requirement to service debt. The cycle is tight. Capped earnings force more reliance on credit for lifestyle, which forces more hours to service that credit, which leaves less time and energy to build leverage or invest. The system is efficient as a trap. If that sounds bleak, good. Clarity precedes choice. Most people caught in the loop don't know how the gears mesh. Once you see the teeth, you can choose to stop feeding them. So here's your immediate takeaway to test the water before we move on. Open a simple spreadsheet. List your cash balances, current recurring consumer debt obligations, credit cards, auto loans, buy now, pay later totals, and an estimate of how many hours per week you trade for your paycheck. Be honest. Then answer. If I lost half my income tomorrow, how long before my cash dries up? If I stopped working entirely, what would cover my bills? This is uncomfortable, but these numbers give you a reality check. Too many people live on assumptions. The math forces confrontation with truth. We've unpacked 2 of the 3 structural reasons that keep people financially stuck. I've shown how your hours are scarce and how cash quietly shrinks. I've started to point to the social and psychological fuel that keeps the loop moving. The 3rd reason, the ego tax in full, digs deeper into how status spending financed by high-cost debt converts your future freedom into today's image. It's the part that will ask you to confront choices that look good in the moment but cost dearly in the long run. We will get there, and when we do, we'll run the numbers in public. Depreciation schedules, interest math, and a simple ledger that shows you exactly how many years of labor a flashy purchase actually costs. We'll also map the escape protocol, the sequential tactical steps that stop the bleeding, create leverage, and shift idle cash into productive assets. Those steps are not slogans. They're practical moves you can start this week. Right now, if you're still with me, take one small action before we go further. Pick up that phone, open your banking app, and check two numbers: total outstanding high-interest consumer debt and total liquid cash. Write them down. Don't judge. Just record reality. We're going to use those numbers as baseline data, and from there, we'll build a plan that respects your life, your responsibilities, and your need for dignity. You're not lazy. You're not cursed. You're operating inside a system that rewards scale, not sweat, ownership, not hours, and perceptions, sometimes at the expense of future freedom. Understanding the mechanisms doesn't absolve responsibility. It gives you leverage to change it. Hold that thought. The next piece, the full anatomy of the ego tax and the exact escape protocol with step-by-step tactics, is where the confrontation becomes practical. You'll see the math laid out for a typical $50,000 car purchase, the real cost of minimum payments on credit cards over a few years, and the precise conservative ways to redirect surplus dollars into assets that protect purchasing power and compound over time. If you've written down your cash and debt numbers, you're already ahead. Keep that sheet open. We're going to turn those numbers from points of stress into instruments of choice. If you've written down your cash and debt numbers, you're already ahead. Keep that sheet open. We're going to turn those numbers from points of stress into instruments of choice. Let's finish the anatomy of the ego tax, the exact math that makes a flashy purchase into years of your future labor, so you can see the trade you're making in clear dollars and hours. Imagine the $50,000 car again. This is a hypothetical example to show the mechanics, not a recommendation. You buy a new $50,000 vehicle with an 8% auto loan over 5 years. At 8% interest, your monthly payment on a $50,000 loan is about $1,000. Over 60 months, you pay roughly $60,080. That's $10,000 in interest alone. Meanwhile, the car loses value fast. Assume a conservative 20% depreciation the moment you drive off the lot. That's typical. And about 50% depreciation over 5 years, depending on model and market. So after 5 years, the vehicle might be worth $25,000. A $25,000 loss in value plus roughly $10,980 paid in interest. Combine those, and you've transferred about $35,980 of real economic value out of your pocket. If you earn $30 an hour, that's the equivalent of roughly 193 hours of work, or nearly 30 full work weeks at full-time hours. If you earn $15 an hour, that same cost equals over 2,985 hours, more than a year of full-time work. Put bluntly, buying that car on a 5-year loan is the same economically as handing over months of future labor. You gained mobility and status today and sold away flexibility and options tomorrow. That's the ego tax in action. Credit cards are even more brutal for the same reason. Imagine a $5,000 balance at 24% APR, and you pay only the minimum, a typical 2% monthly minimum payment. That minimum payment initially is $100. At that pace, the balance will shrink so slowly that you'll pay many thousands in interest and take decades to clear the debt. A simple transparency example: paying $100 a month on a 24% APR on $5,000 will take well over 20 years and cost you more in interest than the original purchase. If instead you attacked that balance aggressively, you could erase the interest drag in months and reclaim those future hours. The lesson: minimum payments convert what could be a few months of focused repayment into years of financial bondage. Buy now, pay later plans and deferred financing look like a free lunch until a job change, An unexpected bill or a rate reset reveals the cost. Financing consumption is a contract that converts future uncertain hours into guaranteed monthly obligations today. And because much of that spending is on goods that depreciate or lose relevance, you pay both interest and rapid loss of value. Now take a breath and picture the whole loop. Hours are capped. Cash melts. Debt siphons future labor. The loop is not mystical. It's arithmetic plus incentives. The good news is arithmetic can be changed. That's what the escape protocol does, a step-by-step sequence that stops the immediate damage, then builds a foundation that leverages scale and ownership. Escape protocol. Step 1. Stop the bleeding. The first rule is simple. Cease creating new high-cost holes in your financial bucket. Practically, that means 3 immediate actions you can take this week. First, identify and prioritize debts by interest rate. List out every balance and its APR. The math is unsentimental. High-interest debt compounds fastest. If you owe 24% on a credit card, paying that down is effectively earning a guaranteed after-tax return equal to that interest rate, rare in investing. 2 widely used approaches exist. The avalanche method attacks the highest rate debt first for the best mathematical outcome. The snowball method attacks the smallest balance first to build momentum psychologically. Use whichever keeps you consistent. Consistency beats theory when change requires behavior. Second, stop funding status with credit. That means pause new financed purchases. That doesn't mean you can't replace a necessary depreciating item sensibly. It means you avoid elective upgrades and luxury purchases on installment plans. If you have a finance luxury that's bleeding you, a car with payments you can't afford, subscriptions you never use, consider selling it. That immediate principal reduction increases your optionality and reduces the fixed hours you must work. Third, take short, practical measures to reduce interest cost. If you have excellent credit, a balance transfer card with a 0% promotional period can give you breathing room to pay down principal without interest. But read the fine print, track the end date, and have a plan for the remaining balance. For loans with high payments, call your lender and ask for lower rates, hardship programs, or refinancing options. Not every phone call convinces a bank, but many times slight adjustments in payment schedule reduce pressure. Do not treat refinancing as a permanent fix. It's a tool to lower immediate burden while you rebuild discipline. A small habit change can accelerate results. Automate your payments so you never miss a due date. Late fees and penalty rate hikes are free wealth destroyers. Reroute small guilt-free status spending, one streaming service, one dining out slot, toward debt repayment. When you free up even $200 to $400 a month and direct it at the highest cost debt, the math compounds quickly. You reduce principal, which reduces interest, which frees up cash to attack the next debt. Make your spreadsheet reflect the reality. Show the interest you're paying this month, and then show what would happen if you added $200 extra toward the highest APR. Seeing progress numerically keeps you engaged. Also build a minimal emergency buffer while you attack debt. Radical debt paydown without any rainy day money risks you sliding back into credit when the first unexpected car repair or medical bill appears. A practical approach many people use: save a small dedicated $1,000 starter emergency fund while you simultaneously attack high-interest debt. After the highest rate debts are under control, Expand that buffer to 3 months of essential expenses. You don't need a perfect safety net to begin. You need one that prevents regressions. One more behavioral tip. Make debt repayment visible. Use spreadsheets, whiteboards, or an app. Cross off debts as you eliminate them. The psychological reward of watching a liability go to zero is monumental. More powerful than reading an abstract investment return number. Escape protocol. Step 2. Decouple income from time. This is the lever the wealthy use. Building ways to earn that are not strictly tied to your daily hours. Leverage, scale, ownership. Leverage comes in many practical forms. Choose what fits your skills, constraints, and personality. Skill leverage. Specialize in a scarce skill where you can command a premium or where your output multiplies with tooling. Examples: software engineering plus productization, copywriting plus templates sold repeatedly, specialized consulting with retainer contracts. The practical move is this: identify a high-leverage skill you enjoy, commit predictable hours every week to deepen it, and create a repeatable product around it. Product leverage. Build something once and sell it many times. That could be an online course, a downloadable template, a plugin, or a small SaaS tool. A simple path looks like this. Pick a narrow problem you can solve. Outline a minimum viable product, MVP, you can build in 90 days with focused effort, even if it's only 5 hours on weeknights. Get the product in front of 10 paying customers. Learn, iterate, and then scale distribution. If you price a template at $50 and sell it to 200 customers a year, that's $10,000 of additional income for work you largely did up front. A product's upside comes from distribution and repeatability. Your time after launch is spent on improving and marketing, not recreating the core solution every time. Business leverage, moving from freelancer to owner. Many people trade time for money as contractors. The transition is to productize your service into a productized agency or recurring revenue business. Hire or subcontract 1-2 people, standardize your offering, and sell packages that scale. The founder's time converts from billable hours to managerial and marketing hours that unlock larger revenue multiples. Capital leverage, owning assets that produce cash flows. Rental real estate is a classic example. Invest in a property with positive cash flow, and the tenancy produces income not directly tied to your daily labor. Be conservative. Rental ownership requires management, maintenance, and market risk. So, learn the numbers and start small. House hacking, partnering, or investing in a small duplex are practical entry points. Digital leverage, content, affiliate models, and ad revenues. Consistent, niche content can create a long tail of income. It's slow, but it compounds. Treat content like product development. Test topics. Measure conversion. Reinvest in what works. A simple, tactical regimen to start building leverage while keeping your day job. Commit 3 to 5 focused hours per weeknight to a single leverage project, plus 4 or 6 hours on one weekend day. Structure the next 90 days as a build and validate period. Week 1-4, research and outline MVP. Week 5-8, build and get first users. Week 9-12, iterate and set modest revenue goals. Don't scatter your attention across 10 opportunities. Focus is the multiplier. To keep you honest, quantify the output per hour goal. If you aim to build a small digital product requiring 200 hours of development and you price it at $50, you need to sell 100 units to break even on your time at 10-hour equivalent. If the market suggests you can sell 1,000 units over a year with modest marketing, your time converts to a high-return lever. The numbers cut through the glamour. Build the smallest thing that proves demand quickly. Caveat: leverage is not instant and not guaranteed. Many attempts fail. That's why we keep a modest buffer, avoid catastrophically risky moves, and test quickly and cheaply. The key is to start small, measure, and scale what works. Escape protocol. Step 3. Convert surplus into productive assets. Once you've stopped the leaks and begun to build leverage, the next imperative is to convert surplus cash into assets that protect purchasing power and can grow over time. This is capital allocation at a personal level. Start with the basics. An emergency fund that covers essentials for 3 to 6 months, or whatever number fits your family and risk. This is your liquidity cushion, not a place for long-term purchasing power protection. Once that minimum cushion exists, automate contributions out of your paycheck to go into long-term vehicles. Automation is not glamorous, but it's the most reliable way to ensure money flows away from temptation and into ownership. Dollar cost averaging is a practical strategy. Invest fixed amounts each month into diversified low-cost funds. Here's a conservative illustration. Suppose you can free up $500 a month and invest it at an assumed long-term nominal return of 7%. This is a historical type example, not a promise. After 10 years of monthly contributions, that $500 a month grows to about $86,500, assuming monthly compounding at that rate. After 20 years, the same $500 monthly grows to roughly $260,000. Those are conservative, hypothetical numbers that show the power of steady, patient contributions paired with compounding. The counterfactual is holding that same money in cash. With 5% inflation, the real purchasing power of that cash erodes substantially over the same period. Where to put that surplus? A few pragmatic, diversified buckets work for most people. Broad market equity exposure through low-cost index funds or ETFs. Over decades, equities capture corporate earnings growth and can outpace inflation. These funds are simple, liquid, and cheap. Cash-flowing businesses or small business ownership. Buying or building a business that generates profit and can be scaled or sold is an ownership route that can dramatically change your financial picture. Again, start small and validate demand. Real estate that produces positive cash flow or rental income. Real estate can serve as an inflation hedge and a source of passive income, but it requires due diligence and management. Consider smaller entry strategies: duplexes, house hacking, REITs for passive exposure, or partnering with experienced operators. Commodities and tangible assets in small positions if you want inflation exposure, but recognize volatility and storage management costs. Diversification matters. Don't concentrate everything into one speculative bet. Rebalance annually, or when allocations drift substantially. Keep fees low. Fees compound like negative returns over long horizons. Some practical rules of thumb for deploying surplus without overreaching: automate contributions right after payday to avoid the temptation to spend first. Keep your allocation simple: a core equity fund, a small bond allocation for stability, and a real asset slice if it fits your profile. Reinvest dividends. It's the lazy compounder that works in your favor. If you have employer-sponsored retirement accounts with matching contributions, capture the match. That's an immediate return many investors miss. Avoid parking long-term savings in zero-interest accounts. Inflation will eat them. That's the saver's punishment in reverse. A concrete, conservative starter plan for someone emerging from debt over 12-24 months might look like this as a hypothetical path. Maintain a $1,000 starter emergency fund while aggressively attacking high-rate debt. Increase the emergency fund to 3 months when high-rate consumer debt is gone. Once high-rate debt is eliminated, redirect the bulk of surplus into automated monthly investments to a diversified low-cost index fund, while allocating a small portion to a leverage project, product, or small business. After 3 to 5 years, the combination of saved capital and recurring product business profits creates options to scale the business, invest in a rental, or shift into lower hours work. Let's translate these moves back into the central metric we care about: time and options. Every dollar you no longer pay in interest is a fraction of future hours returned to you. Every small product you build is a machine that extends your time earning capacity beyond 24 hours in a day. Every dollar invested intentionally into productive assets is a vote for future freedom, not for present status. That change of orientation from consuming identity to building choices is the difference between feeling stuck and feeling in control. Addressing common fears and pitfalls. People worry about market downturns, job loss, and making the wrong investment. Those are legitimate. That's why the protocol is sequential. Stop the bleeding first. Build a buffer, then deploy slowly and consistently. Small, steady ownership beats sporadic, emotional risk-taking. Risk management includes avoiding leverage on consumption, keeping a liquidity cushion, and diversifying across types of assets. Psychological work is as important as arithmetic. Expect social friction. Friends who don't understand your new priorities, relatives who view frugality as stinginess, the uncomfortable feeling of saying no to obligatory status displays. That friction is real, and it's temporary compared to the permanent options you're buying. Prepare scripts. I'm focusing on building something long-term, so I'm skipping the upgrades for now. You don't need permission to choose differently. Now, a short, practical 90-day plan to start implementing all 3 steps without quitting your job tomorrow. Days 1-7. Record reality. Total cash, total high-interest consumer debt, monthly income, essential expenses. Identify the single highest APR debt. Days 8 to 30. Implement stop-the-bleeding measures. Pause non-essential financed purchases. Call lenders for lower rates or a refinance quote. Set up automatic minimum payments, plus an extra fixed amount toward the highest APR debt. Build a $1,000 starter emergency fund if you don't have one. Days 31 to 90. Allocate focused weekly blocks to a leverage project. 3 90-minute sessions per week to build MVP and 1 Saturday block for marketing research. Direct any windfalls or freed bill payments into extra debt repayment or into the leverage project budget. At day 90, evaluate. Is the high APR debt down? Do you have a buffer in place? Have you launched an MVP or captured the first sale? Year 1 checklist. High-interest consumer debts eliminated. Starter emergency cushion expanded to 3 months. Automated monthly investment begun even at a modest $100-500 a month. And a leverage project with validated demand and first revenue. 3-year checkpoint. Meaningful passive or semi-passive income stream in place from a product, talk, business, real estate. Investment portfolio grown. Fewer fixed obligations tied to consumption. All along this journey, measure the right things. Options created, hours liberated, and fixed obligations reduced. don't worship the bank balance alone. Worship the choices that balance represents. One final framing that matters: this is not about becoming conspicuously wealthy so you can display status. It's about reclaiming optionality, the ability to choose where your time goes. Wealth is the number of mornings you can sleep in if you want. The brand of the car, the size of the house, the latest gadget, those are signals, not the scoreboard. Your scoreboard is hours owned and decisions uncoerced by necessity. If you want one concrete, immediate action right now, here it is. Set a 30-minute block on your calendar tonight. Open the sheet you made. Put 3 columns. 1. High-interest consumer debts with APRs and monthly minimums. 2. Liquid cash. 3. One leverage idea you could pursue for 3 to 5 hours a week. In that 30 minutes, decide the one financial habit you will implement tomorrow. An automated $50 transfer to an investment account, an extra $200 toward the highest APR, or 90 minutes this weekend working on your leverage project. Small, consistent commitments create the momentum that math then magnifies. This whole framework is framed in the spirit of Buffett-style capital allocation. Be deliberate about where you put capital, cut unnecessary losses, and favor investments that either produce cash or preserve purchasing power. Remember, we're borrowing the lens, not assigning words the man didn't speak. The point is to think like an allocator of capital for your life. You now have 3 structural reasons you may have felt stuck: the biological time equation that caps labor, the saver's punishment that erodes idle cash, and the ego tax that trades future labor for present image. You also have a sequential escape. Stop the bleeding, build leverage, and convert surplus into productive assets. Those are not slogans. They're a practical roadmap that matches the arithmetic of the system. Change is uncomfortable. It will cost social currency and require small daily discipline. But it is also the kind of path where effort compounds into options. The math favors those who are patient, deliberate, and willing to trade a little present prestige for a lot more future freedom. If this resonated and you want the step-by-step breakdown of how to build a specific leverage project, a 90-day blueprint for a product, or a conservative plan to convert a given surplus into a diversified portfolio, subscribe. I'll make the next videos an actual handbook. The exact spreadsheets to use, the repayment calculators, the product launch checklist, and case studies with the math laid bare. Owning your time is the truest metric of wealth. Start turning your numbers into choices today. Subscribe to follow the series and get the practical guides that walk you through each step.